are live. Welcome everybody to the Blue Plate Special. I'm Andy Andrews. You have joined us at Wisdom Harbor Studios in the beautiful financial district of Orange Beach, Alabama. Here at the Wharf, home of the famous escalator statues and home of the world famous Sand Dollar Lifestyles, which is where I got the shirt. So when you visit us, you have to say hey to the people at Sand Dollar Lifestyle and tell them we said hey. We don't get over there very often. It's right across the street, but ours is like crazy here. And you'll want to get a picture on the escalator statues too. Heather Olson, good morning. They're in Utah. Hang on, let me cough. Okay. Andrea Kenny, good afternoon. Eugene Hodge, good afternoon to Andy and the crew. Bonnie Nix, hello from Big Kentucky. Yep, the basketball state. Salis Mashi, God bless you, and amen. Bob Woodall. Bob Woodall, man, I was thinking about you this morning and thinking about how many crazy memories we have of growing up in Dothan, Alabama, riding to school on our bicycles on the pig trail, which I don't know why they call it a pig trail. There was never any pigs there. We never saw a pig there. I don't know, but I rode my bike to school on the pig trail with Mike and Jody Rawls many a day, and rode home on Suicide Hill, which is what we called it because it was a big hill, even though we had never had any evidence that anybody had committed suicide on or near it. But it was a big hill, and we rode our bikes down. And I guess if your chain got off your bicycle going down that hill, it could. Do you remember that? Do you remember your chain falling off your bicycle?
It happened. It happened.
You probably had some motorized George Jetson bicycle.
Yeah, no.
Young as you are. I'm not hearing you in here. Are you?
Oh, I had the studio.
Are they hearing you?
I had the studio turned off in there because of the podcast we
Can
just
you
recorded.
guys hear out there in the? You can hear Matt? Okay, in the studio audience.
Your room was just turned off because of the podcast.
Oh yeah. We just recorded a podcast that was great. We recorded a great podcast with T.G. Shepherd, and he told us a story about Elvis that you are not gonna believe. So, but it's totally true. Gretchen Hayes from Wichita, Kansas. Marcy Carlson Taylor, good morning. And did you like the Professional Noticer this morning? I mean, that was one of my favorite with Joe Camp. Joe Camp is Benji's dad, and so that's the podcast that just came out today, the Professional Noticer with Benji's dad, Joe Camp. He's the guy who made the Benji movies, and he got this dog out of a shelter, and made a movie, and it cost him $500,000, and every movie studio in Los Angeles turned it down. And so he had to decide whether he's just going to declare bankruptcy and throw it in the garbage, or in for a dime, in for a dollar, and get more money and make some prints of it and try to sell it to the local theaters. And that's what he did. And the original Benji made $45 million. And then they made 5 more movies. So there you go. Joe Camp. And you can bet he is camping in Bell Buckle, Tennessee. Great guy. Great stories. And has a new book out about horses. And so you'll hear some of his stories about horses are awesome. Heidi Lofton. You like the intro? Our intro to this? Or the intro to the Professional Noticer? You say it's just simple fun. But I think it's just us. Because it's probably less simple on the Professional Noticer. But in studio today, we have Brian and Deborah. Brian and Deborah from Louisiana. Well, How's it feel to be out of the country for a while? Yeah, we're glad to have you. And Lauren from Gulf Shores. Hey, Lauren. And Esther from Virginia. Good to see you. Virginia, that's one of those northern states. You know, Virginia, we think Virginia's like they got snow and, you know, it's hard to think of Virginia as being a southern state because, you know, Virginia's so far north. You guys are just like Yankees way up there. Rhonda Hackney Robertson just finished reading Baseball Boys and Bad Words. You can't stop laughing. You know, I think, this is just me. Now, that's the funniest book I've ever written in my life. And I have had many reports of people using that book as a kind of a brochure for their business or a brochure for their church, or you know, that what they do is they just, old man's here, okay, and Chris Comer, hey old man, how are you doing? So the way they use this book as a brochure for things is they have this book that takes 10 minutes to read, and they give it to somebody and they say, hey, I got a dare you for you. I got a dare for you. Take this book. You can't read it ahead of time, but you have to read it aloud tonight to your family. So to read it aloud to your family. And, you know, the reports we get, people just like crying, laughing. You know, Dave Ramsey told me the first time he heard that he had to pull off the side of the road because his family was about to come unglued. And so they were listening to me read it on a CD. But the story is very funny. And so people are using that book to give it away. And then people come back to them and say, oh my God, you know, and so it's a connection to them to be able to take them in another part of the relationship and say, hey, come see so-and-so, or hey, you know, let's have coffee or something. Yeah, and so they're using it as like a get to know you kind of thing. And it's working. So Marcy Cross said, he said, what does the shirt say? It says, fish more, worry less. I think that's a pretty good mantra for life. Fish more, worry less. Yep. And there's so many forms of fishing that you can do. Matt Jack is watching us. How about you, Matt Jack? Matt Jack, probably in Arizona or somewhere. Luann Wright enjoyed a note to Garcia. You know, that, I'm glad you got to listen to that on wisdomharbor.com. That is truly an awesome thing. If you hadn't heard it, you have to hear that. Marcy Crosser Taylor says it's supposed to go up to 71 degrees where you are today. Wow. Really? In Pasco, Washington, 71 degrees? That's kind of hot. Terry from Georgia says Andy spoke to a farm meeting in Gulf Shores. He and his books have changed many lives. Many lives. A farm meeting. I remember a meeting of farmers.
I think you missed the word before the farm.
Oh, what? Oh. State Farm. Oh, there you go. That takes it to a whole different place, Terry. You know, I was thinking a farm meeting. Wow. Where a bunch of farms get together? I don't remember. I remember speaking of that. But State Farm, that would be, yes. Yes. State Farm. I got you now, Terry. All right, we got a great show today. We've got Today in History. We're going to cover Today in History. And we're also going to cover, we're going to transgress a little bit from Today in History, and we're going to discuss what is happening now, that 100 years from now, things, you know, the things that people might be talking about 100 years from now. What's going on now that we're just like watching happen, and that 100 years from now, some bozo will be sitting and saying, all right, let me tell you what happened on this date. and so, but it is May 3rd. May 3rd. The Ides of May. Is it the Ides? I don't think it is, but I think that sounds cool. The Ides of May. Beware the Ides of May. Okay, so I looked back into history and I found some interesting things that happened. They're very interesting. They're also interesting and interesting. So, in 1654, Richard Thurlow opened a bridge over the Newberry River in Rowley, Massachusetts. Now, that wouldn't have been such a big deal, but much to the consternation of the other people in town, he explained that this would be a toll bridge. It was the first toll road or bridge or whatever in history. So Richard had this idea that he was gonna assess a toll from anybody crossing over it. And he explained, he tried to get people like, what? We're gonna pay to, well, yeah, I built it. And so, you're gonna have to pay me a dollar or a dougal or a crown or a penny smith or whatever they used back then. And to cross over, you're going to have to pay me or give me a chicken. Just give me a chicken and then get over. And but he tried to calm them down by saying that I will only be taking the toll until the bridge is paid for. Which I think is the first time that was ever said. I think that was the first time that was ever used. Today, in keeping with the fact that no toll bridge or toll road is ever paid for in the history of their existence, the Richard Thurlow Bridge continues the practice of charging a toll after 400 years until the present owners declare that the bridge is paid for. I wonder if you can still get across for a chicken. Here's a chicken. I'd like to cross the toll bridge. All right, on this date, May 3rd, in 1933, there were a lot of babies born, but one particular baby named James Brown was born on this date in 1933, and he became known for his ability to scream on key. Hey! Are you good? He had the ability to scream on key. Hey! He called it ring shouting. And with this ring shouting, he recorded 17 number one hits. Hey! Including the theme from Rocky IV, Living in America. Hey! What's up? Hey! He was called the Godfather of Soul Music. Curiously, the king of soul music was Sam Cooke, but James Brown was known as the Godfather of soul music. He was also known for firing members of the band in the middle of his show. He would fire members of his band in the middle of the show. They missed a note or missed a dance move, or they didn't go "Hey!" at the right time, and he'd fire them in the middle of the show. He's also known for sabotaging opening acts that he thought were too good. He would take their speakers or tell them they couldn't use their drums, or But he was a good guy. He also spent time in federal prison during the 1980s, and he had 9 or 13 kids. Now, that's his quote. 9 or 13. He said he wasn't really sure. Hey! Okay, in 1966, on this date. Now, if you look at this date in 1966, May 3rd, but you move earlier in the year, there was a business that was having a hard time. They had brought out this board game, this game called Twister, and it was not selling. The sales in the store were just like non-existent, and many stores felt that the game was like, it was risque. It was not something that families could play. And so a lot of stores refused to carry Twister, and sales were so bad that the game was about to be pulled from the market. Then May 3rd happened. Do you remember Ava Gabor? She was the star of Green Acres. Darling, I love you, but give me Park Avenue. You remember that? Remember that? Oliver, Lisa, Oliver. You remember that? Yeah. Goodbye, city life. Ava Gabor. Beautiful, beautiful Ava Gabor. Well, she was a guest on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson the evening of May 3rd. And Ava Gabor and Johnny Carson played Twister on the show that night. People at home watched, and in a single moment, everybody in the nation went, "Oh, so that's not a kid's game. That's for after we put the kids to bed." And the day after Johnny Carson and Ava Gabor twisted on national TV, people were lining up at the stores and asking for Twister, and 3 million games were sold just that year, and it's still selling today. How about that? On this date, the Ides of May. In 1937, on this day, Margaret Mitchell won a Pulitzer Prize for Gone with the Wind. Wow. Which I think that is great. I think winning a Pulitzer Prize for Gone with the Wind is just awesome. And the reason I think it's awesome is because 38 publishers rejected the manuscript. 38 publishers said that this was not worth putting on paper. And it won the Pulitzer Prize. And it made a movie that had the first cuss word ever in it. Damn. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. That was in the book, in the movie. They had to fight for it, but they put it in there. Damn. First cuss word ever in a movie. Movie made millions, still being shown. But 38 publishers said, no, this book is not. You know, that is a precedent-setting event, but it's not the only event. A Confederacy of Dunces also won the Pulitzer, and A Confederacy of Dunces was written by John Kennedy Toole, and John Kennedy Toole tried so desperately to get this book published, and publisher after publisher after publisher said that A Confederacy of Dunces was unpublishable. It was not worth putting on paper, and the guy actually killed himself. He committed suicide. And his mother did not give up on the book and continued to send it out and get it back and send it out and get it back until finally the manuscript was accepted by the Louisiana University Press, which is like a college press, you know. And the book came out. It's still in print today, but it won the Pulitzer Prize. People, especially you there, Sikaja Isaac, who is watching from Bugiri in Uganda. We're glad to have you. What time is it in Bugiri? But you guys, I mean, we have got to be careful, you know, because I have long said, you know, I mean, the Traveler's Gift, I got 2 rejection letters over on the wall because The Traveler's Gift is my best-selling book of all time, and it was rejected by 51 different publishers over 3.5 years. 51 publishers said The Traveler's Gift wasn't worth putting on paper. and the stories are just they're ongoing. You know, I met a thriller author. Mitch Rapp is his good guy. Vince, I can't remember his last name. But anyway, he was turned down 30-something times before he ever got one. He sold millions and millions of books. And you know, Rudyard Kipling wrote The Jungle Book. And he had a letter from a publisher that said, "I'm sorry, you just don't have a grasp of the English language." Dr. Seuss was told that his books had no value for children and that children would think that they were ridiculous. The Diary of Anne Frank, a publisher said that had no ability to be marketed to teenagers and no value whatsoever. So it's on and on and on. And so to me, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you're about, you can't allow somebody else's opinions about your worth and your work to become your reality. You really can't even spend any time thinking about it. You can't, I mean, you can't waste your energy reading reviews and asking what people think, you know, because they'll generally tell you. And this is why I suspect that the best books that have ever been written, the best music that has ever been written, is probably in a drawer somewhere because somebody wrote it and they gave it to somebody and said, "What do you think?" And they said, And they put it in the drawer, and here's this greatest manuscript of writing, this greatest music that's ever been produced, and they quit. I mean, you know, the one sign of maturity is your ability to live in ambiguity. That means ambiguity is confusion. And so you're a sign of a mature person is your ability to live with confusion ahead of you. It's like people asking me, you know, how do you live in these times of uncertainty? And I'm like, the same way I've always lived in times of uncertainty, because I mean, haven't times always been uncertain? I mean, have you ever lived in a time where you knew what was happening tomorrow? I hadn't, and so it's all times of uncertainty, and so to think that we should go into our shells or take advice from people when we've been given a vision or we've been given an idea. I just think we have to be really, really careful allowing somebody else's opinion about our worth and our work. We have to be careful about that becoming our reality. And times of confusion are constant, but times of people running from confusion are also constant. You think about the times we hit the wall and we decide that there's no way, nothing that can be done. There's nothing that can be done. We're out of time, we're out of money, we're out of ideas, we're out of leadership. There's nothing that can be done. And then you think about the times that you're trudging down the road in fog, and you think, when am I going to come to a clearing? Is it around the next bend? Is it around the next bend? Is it around the next bend? And and in life, you just don't know. And so there is an amount of confusion that everybody is willing to deal with. And those are usually times of confusion that we can determine the end of the confusion. It's like a simple example would be opening an envelope that you get in the mail. There's that confusion, that not knowing. I mean, you don't know what's in the envelope. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Is it a bill? Is it, something from a political candidate? Is it? I mean, I know what it looks like, but what is it? And so there's that confusion. But we are willing to live with that because we know the end of that. We know we can open it up and we can see what it is, and the confusion is gone. We can get past that confusion. And there are probably broader examples of that, but that's just a simple example. But in real life, the confusion that we run into, we generally don't know the end of that. We don't know when that answer is coming. We don't know when that change is coming, and we're just going ahead. But that's so uncomfortable for so many people that they duck out of the fog, or they get away from the wall, they go another direction, or they say, this is the end of this, there's no more that can be done, and so they go. But what they don't know, and what they're not thinking about, is that in every moment of clarity, in every moment where, oh, I understand, or oh, really? That's what this is about, or oh, okay, so this means this. That in every moment that a change becomes, oh wow, that we understand, that we get the answer, that we, after all this time, there it is. In every instance of that occurring, if you back it up just 5 seconds, you're in that cloud of confusion, and you don't know how long it's going to last. And so what's different about that 5 seconds until the answer comes and that 5 years before the answer comes? It comes in our ability to choose whether we're going to stay the course, whether we believe, whether, what do we believe? What do we consider worthwhile? There was a time in my life that there were people who who were throwing up other people's lives to me. I was an adult and I was living on the beach and then kind of living nowhere, and I would rent a place and live out of my car, and I was an adult, and there were people that became increasingly anxious for me. Now, granted, the good news is this was before cell phones, it was before the internet, and so many people that had predicted my decline and fall were unaware that I had declined and fallen. There are people who hear the stories of me living on the beach now and they go, wow, we didn't even know, and we lived 100 miles away. Yeah, I know. It is, and part of that is because I wasn't going to tell you. I mean, because, you guys all said that my life is going to be a disaster and that I'm ruining my life. And so what am I going to do? Call you and say, hey, you were right, I've ruined my life, so can I have some help? I mean, I'm not going to do that. And so I just toughed it out and continued to think about being a comedian, being a writer, and, I would bathe in the Holiday Inn swimming pool and try to do my hair, and then I would go in at night and ask Brent Burns if I could do comedy between his sets. And there was a lot of time there that you're in the clouds, and I had people that increasingly became anxious for me that were around, and they would begin to compare my existence with the existence of my peers. And they would say, well, so-and-so has already been married for 3 years. So-and-so, they own a house. So-and-so's got a steady job, and they've had it for 4 years. And, so-and-so, our good friend that we grew up with, they're driving whatever kind of car. And I knew that was true. I knew that I was last in line for my high school class, and but I also had in the back of my mind, I don't want to marry a woman like they married. I don't want to live in a house like they're living in. I don't want to drive a car like they're driving. I don't want to have a job like that. And so it's always been about, was I willing to hang in long enough and believe in what I felt like God had put in my heart? And was I willing to lean into that confusion long enough for the smoke to clear? Because, remember, in every case, when the smoke clears, and in every case when you get the answer, just 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 day, 5 days before, you didn't know if it's clearing right away or if it's going to be smoky for another 5 years? You don't know. But one thing is guaranteed, that when you put that manuscript you've written in the drawer, and when you stop painting and you quit writing songs, or you put that song in the closet, or you settle for less than what you thought you could be, you can be sure at that moment it is over, because you just called the game. But as long as you lean against that wall, as long as you lean into the confusion, who is to say who's right and who's wrong? And, I look at those times of going in there with Brent Burns and trying to be funny for 17 people that had never seen a live comedian before, because this was way before all the comedy clubs and way before any of that stuff happened. They'd never seen a live comedian before. They were looking at me and they weren't seeing one then. But I kept after that, and I would take something from it, and I would learn something from it, and it was less than 4 years from that mark of having sand in my shoes and no blow dryer for my long hair, and people being like, who is this? When is Brent getting up to play again? It was less than 4 years from that point to the night that I walked off a stage and had Joan Rivers take my hand in her hand and say, "Kid, you were incredible." And a week later, I started touring with her and was with her everywhere she went for 2 years. And there were plenty of people around to tell me what I wasn't good enough at. And that was only the beginning of being told that I wasn't good enough to do something, or wasn't good enough to write something, or good enough to speak somewhere, or good enough to host this, or good enough to be that. I mean, it's just the beginning. I mean, people think, oh, really, Traveler's Gift got turned down 51 times? Well, we showed them. Yeah, I showed them. And then they turned down the Noticer. And then they turned down the Butterfly Effect. I mean, it just goes on and on. That's just life. So, Chet and Heather Calhoun from Dallas, Georgia, have come in since I've been jabbering on. Okay, I think I have one more today in history, and then I'll get to what I think people will be talking about years from now about what's going on today, and then we'll get out of here. But in 1973, on May 3rd, this day in history, the Sears Tower was completed, and that made it the tallest building in the world at the time. It was 1,454 feet high. It was 108 stories. It dwarfed the Empire State Building, and it held that distinction for 25 years. But as things get old, we lose our fascination with things, and so now, instead of being named for a worldwide brand, Sears, a multinational corporation. Not only is Sears gone, but the tower is only the 25th highest skyscraper in the world. And it has been relegated to having been, now it's named after a catchphrase made popular by a 70s sitcom called Different Strokes. And so while the building is casually referred to as the Willis Tower, the official name of the most visited structure in the city of Chicago is the "What You Talking About" Willis Tower. The official name. Here's one more. On this day in 1979, Margaret Thatcher of the Conservative Party was elected prime minister. She was the first woman in Europe to hold that post, and she later became the longest continually serving British premier since 1827. I got one more. This is just last year. In 2021, I just think this is good. In 2021, Bill Gates and his wife Melinda Gates announced their divorce on this date after 27 years. And not reported, this is not reported, were the trial transcripts of the divorce, though there were two notable quotes that were recorded that never came out, and my research has found these quotes. The first was by Bill Gates when Bill insisted that Melinda had done nothing to earn half of his fortune. And he said, "I was the one in the garage. I was the guy with the pimples and the pins and a pocket protector. I deserve this, damn it. For God's sake, I built an empire while she was using an Apple computer in junior high school." That's what he said. That was Bill Gates' quote. A little bitterness there, I'm thinking. A little bitterness from Bill. And the quote that I unearthed from Melinda is a question that she directed to the judge after the closing arguments when she said, "Will someone explain to me how I'm supposed to support myself on a measly $1 billion a week?" That's what she said. Yeah, tragedy in their lives. So, what is happening today that folks will be talking about 100 years from now? You know, I think one of the things that people would be talking about is the decline of Disney and Netflix and CNN and all the streaming services. I think that this is going to be a watermark in our historical floodplain. I think, you know, Netflix hemorrhaged, what was it, 200,000 subscribers last quarter, and they're predicting 2 million subscribers. What was it? CNN hired, who's the guy they hired? Christopher. Who'd they hire? Come on. He was the son of the guy from 60 Minutes. You know what I'm talking about. What's the guy's name? I mean, this is the biggest, the guy on 60 Minutes is the biggest badass ever. I mean, everybody was scared to death of him. Mike.
Can you hear what they're saying?
They're saying
Wallace or?
Mike Wallace, yeah. And so his son, Christopher Wallace, is it Christopher? My brain's not working. I think it is Chris Wallace, but Chris Wallace was fired. Or no, he wasn't fired. He left. He left Fox News to go to CNN to join their CNN streaming service. And a week after he joined them, they went out of business. Which, you know, when you think about it, CNN's ratings have been down for so long. Why? What business advice did they get? Why did you think people were going to pay for something they wouldn't watch for free? I mean, where's the sense in that? Yeah, we'll be making millions. They won't watch us for free. I know. We'll charge them. And then Disney, you know. Disney's gone out of their minds. They've left the world. They've left the planet, you know. But I think there's hubris involved in all of this, because I think that just like people get, they get the big head, you know, they get to thinking they're needed. They get to thinking that they're needed, and they forget to provide value. They forget their unspoken agreement with the public. And so, and people have a choice. And so, you know, here's Netflix, and they're taking stuff off, you know, and they're adding stuff that people don't want and people don't want in their homes. And so people are going, yeah, I don't need that. I don't need Netflix. I wanted it, but I don't need it. And then CNN, yeah, I'd go past it and I'll see it occasionally. I don't need it. What do I need it for? I don't need it. And then Disney, I mean, Disney came on board in our lives, what, in the 50s or 60s, I guess. And it was awesome. It was this one man's dream to provide something for our kids that was clean cut, and that the people on the streets of Disney, they provided a great example. You wanted to take your kids there. All the people that helped your kids on the rides, everybody there's great. And then we responded to that, and we promoted it amongst ourselves. We word of mouthed it. Man, you got to go to Disney World. You got to go to Disneyland. Oh, they're making Disney World. You got to go to Disney World. Did you know that Disney World is so much bigger than Disneyland that Disneyland, the entire Disneyland, can fit in Disney World's parking lot? Did you know that? And we all, you know, we promoted Disney cruises and Disney movies. We grew up on the wonderful world of Disney and Charlie the Cougar and all these movies, and we were right there with them. And somewhere along the line, they turned on that trust. And I remember going to Disney one time, and this was years ago, and I remember going, really? $6 for a bottle of water? I mean, we didn't bring water. They won't let you bring water in the park, and our boys, I mean, it's hot, and then I guess we gotta have water, but it's $6 for a bottle of water. I remember being a part of a convention that was having our convention at one of the Disney World properties. And so part of their deal is that you cannot bring in your own catering, you cannot bring in your own soft drinks for backstage. You have to buy from them. That's part of that. And I remember looking at that that list and realizing that they were charging us $92 for every pot of coffee. Like a pot with 6 cups in it. $92. I'll never forget that. $92. And you know, the admittance to the park has been over $100 for years. And then they built Epcot, and you go in Epcot and go, what is this? This is there's like something you can slowly ride through, something, seeing a corporate thing about Monsanto, and you know that Monsanto Corporation has done, and you can go through this little thing that this company has done, but you go from land to land to land to land around a lake, and you go to Italy, and there's Italy, and then you go to Japan, there's Japan, and you go to Germany, and you go around this huge lake. And in Italy, they have Italian souvenirs, and they have Italian restaurants, and they have Italian snacks and stuff. And then in Japan, they have Japanese restaurants, and they have Japanese flowers to look at, and they have Japanese souvenirs and Japanese toys, and you realize I paid more than $100 a piece for my family to get in here, to be able to buy stuff. Because there ain't really anything to do except look at the stuff and then now they're charging $38 to park your car. $38 to park your car. Can you park anywhere else? No, you can't. Can you park somewhere off property and take a cab into it? No, they don't allow cabs. $38 to park your car. Why? Because they can. And so I think 100 years from now, we'll be looking back at this and we'll be going, wow, that really built to a peak before everybody got tired of it. Because I think that people kind of look, I think people are starting to look, I would guess people are starting to look at this stuff and going, you know, I don't have to have this. My kids don't have to go to Disney World. I don't have to put half a year's salary on a credit card to take my kids to a place that I can buy them more stuff. I mean, we can go into the woods and we can get on our hands and knees and put an ant bed in a jar and put the cap on it and watch the ants build tunnels. And we can go down to the creek and turn over rocks and get pretty stones, or we can go to the beach and we can look at sand or pick up shells, or we can actually be together. But I don't have to spend half a year's salary to entertain my kids because somebody else spent half a year's salary to entertain their kids. I don't need this. I think we're going to look back and we're going to look back on some things that we didn't need. And frankly, you know, this is why it's been my dream for 12 years to create wisdomharbor.com. And we've been going a few months now, and we you know, I was I still hear people say, "Why don't you charge a lot more for that? You can charge a lot more for that. Businesses will pay a lot more." Yeah, I know. That's fine. It's $2.99 a month and $27.99 a month or a year for an individual, or it's $5.99 a month for a family, and that's 8 devices, or it's $58 for a year for a family, and I can survive on that. And the captains are happy to these captains are thrilled to be producing content that is in their wheelhouse. But Wes Hampton has Grammy Awards, but now he's getting to cook and teach you stuff about, because that's a passion of his. Jimmy Yeary is a songwriter who has won major awards, 14 number one hits in different genres, and won major awards, Song of the Year. And he's going, I've always wanted to teach guitar lessons, but I don't have the time to open that up. But now I can teach guitar lessons on Wisdom Harbor, and he's teaching your kids guitar lessons, or he's teaching your family guitar lessons. Joe Camp, I talked to Joe Camp, and Joe Camp is going to be a captain on Wisdom Harbor. Joe Camp is going to teach you how to train your animals. How would you like to have Benji's dad teaching you how to train your animals? Well, that's what he's going to do. And so where you get this for less than you pay for a gallon of gas. And I'm excited about it. And I figure at some point people will start telling other people about it, I guess. I hope. So here's another thing that I think, and this is the last thing, that I think that people will be talking about 100 years from now. And that is the Disinformation Governance Board that has just been announced. I guess you're aware of this, right? I mean, because it sounds like a joke, or it sounds like somebody's, Saturday Night Live is doing a satire of George Orwell in the novel 1984, where, in the novel 1984, the government installs the Ministry of Truth. But these guys aren't kidding. I mean, this board is not a part of the State Department or any other agency that's focused on foreign threats or foreign powers. No, the Disinformation Governance Board is part of the Department of Homeland Security. DHS is a law enforcement agency that's designed to police the United States. And so here's what the head of DHS, Alejandro Mayorkas, this is what he just said for television cameras. This is a quote. "We have just established a Mis- and Disinformation Governance Board in the Department of Homeland Security to more effectively combat the threat of untruth, not only to election security, but to our homeland security." Okay, so one of America's top law enforcement officers has just announced, we are now setting up to police what you say in public and on social media. That's what they've announced. And without defining what disinformation is, our government, the one by the people, of the people, and for the people, that government, without defining disinformation, our government has now created a new agency to fight it. We have some very large books of law that define what is allowed and what is not. But occasionally in world history, where large books of law that people agreed on, and they agreed that these large books of law would be allowed to guide their people, these countries, occasionally in these countries, there have been produced within them this relatively small percentage of individuals who are so brazen in their attempts to grab power that the other population, the larger population of reasonable, educated people, that are believing that, well, surely that's not what they mean, or surely they won't go that far. They allowed themselves to be herded into watching and even participating in things they would have never dreamed themselves capable of. This is history. I mean, this is on and on. This is again and again. Here's also another quote from the head of the Department of Homeland Security. This is his quote. "We have many efforts underway to equip local communities to identify individuals who very well could be descending into violence by reason of ideologies of hate, false narratives, or other disinformation and misinformation propagated on social media and other platforms." So, our nation's largest law enforcement agency has been purposed by the federal government to use their people with guns to do many things to stop disinformation. They aren't even calling it lies, just that they are unapproved assertions from the accepted narrative. A narrative that is accepted by whom? And the appointed head of this effort intends to, and I quote, this is his quote, "identify individuals who could be descending into violence." Could be descending? Not people who have committed violence or even been accused of a crime at all? Our government is using law enforcement to identify and punish people who think the wrong things? This is not from 1984. This is here. This is now. This is in America. And so here's something to remember. Government censorship is prohibited by the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. It's one of the foundations upon which our country, our entire way of life has been built. And with that being said, I would urge you to read 1984. If you hadn't read that since high school, it's a different book. I just thought it was kind of a book about the Soviet Union. And, when I was in high school, I thought, it was what the communists were doing. You read 1984. Read it today. Read it now. And I would urge you to give somebody a copy of How Do You Kill 11 Million People. Read it in 10 minutes. And please spread the word about wisdomharbor.com, if you will. And as Forrest Gump said, that's all I got to say about that. We'll see you next time. We'll see you Thursday.